Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today's a Stashin with Stephanie Day where we make a fat quarter-friendly quilt using one of our latest lines to arrive at the shop. I thought I would show you some of the fabrics while I talk about Stashin with Stephanie. What it is it's a nice subscription program where we send you 12 fat quarters for the price of 10 each month. And that's just $29.95 plus shipping. Then you're going to get a coupon for $10 off a $20 purchase, plus a free pattern. So the pattern that we are making in today's video, you would get that for free if you were a member. Now, if you're not a member, you can always get kits for this pattern or the fabric and the pattern, buy that separately. But if you're a member, you're going to get 18 free yards of fabric if you take advantage of all the discounts each year, plus 12 free patterns. So it's a really great deal. And I'm really loving Pat Bravo's legendary line, which we're using for this month's Stashin with Stephanie. This is her 40th fabric collection, so hats off to Pat Bravo. She owns Art Gallery Fabrics with her husband Walter, and they produce beautiful, beautiful fabrics. The fabric is super soft and silky, and it always has these really rich textures, and I think they really push the boundaries of what is considered great design in the quilting community. And Pat's 40 collection legendary does not disappoint with that. It has lots of really bright, bold marigolds, as well as some really rich pinks, teals, and then of course these blacks to help make everything pop. Now I'm going to be using the brighter bits of the fabric, and then I'm going to be using this chevron as a neutral to tie it all together. We're calling this one garden plot because with all these florals, it's going to kind of look like a garden that is all planned out and mapped out when it is all together. And we're going to make it super fast. I'm going to show you how to strip piece the entire half of a row. And as always, you can get the pattern and the materials for this over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. If you want to sign up for Stashin with Stephanie, you can do that too. We'll have links to it in the description down below. But I'm super excited about this one because it's really easy to change it into different sizes. So if you want to do it with just the 12 that came in your Stashin bundle, you can do that and have a small back quilt. If you want to have something bigger, no big deal. We can make it bigger as well. So all of those different sizes and cutting instructions will be available in your pattern. And again, that is called Garden Plot, and you can get that at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Now, just an FYI, if you sign up for Stashin with Stephanie, you not only get access to that month's pattern, you also get access to all of our previous Stashin with Stephanie patterns. And we've done quite a few now, so you can get a bunch of free stuff just the second you sign up. So that's really cool. And we get this question all the time. So with it, what we do is we order to fill. So if you sign up today, then we will ship it in mid-month the month after. So your payment for this month goes to next month's shipment. So sometimes depending on when you sign up, like if you sign up at the very beginning of the month, it could be a little bit before you get your first shipment, but you get those free patterns right away. All right, let's get started. So I've cut all my pieces from my fat quarters, and you're going to be able to get two sizes of strips from each one. And what we're going to do is we're going to strip piece half of each row. That'll make more sense when we get to it in just a second. But I've got my large piece, my smallest piece, my larger medium, and my smaller medium. The actual measurements are in the pattern, which you can get at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. But what I've done is in between them, I've got my little Stashin strip from my background, and I also have one, you can't see it, but it's over here past this last one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip piece all of these together. I like to use a scant 1/4 inch seam when I'm strip piecing because sometimes I can get a little lazy and get off a little bit when I am sewing those long seams, but do what works for you. 1/4 inch seam, if that works and you're really accurate with it, then do that. But I'm going to start by sewing my little Stashin piece next to my focal fabric, and I'm going to do that for each of them, and I'm sewing it on the right side of that block. So the only thing I'm doing here, I'm not pinning or anything, I'm just going to strip piece these together, but I am making sure that my selvages are on the same side, and that is only because we have a directional piece that I'm using for my Stashin, so I want to make sure it's all pointing the same direction when it's all done. All right, I'm going to keep going with the next one. Now it's time to press our seams. More and more I like to press my seams open and flat. I really like the way it looks, and I have a really easy time keeping that seam straight, especially on long strips like this. But if you prefer to press it underneath the dark side, you can do that as well. So when I'm pressing a seam open, what I do is I start to open it with my fingertips. And then I put the nose of that iron right smack dab in the middle of the seam, and then I run my fingers, at least 3 of them, to kind of keep that seam open ahead of it. That way I'm able to just go straight down the middle of that seam, make it nice and easy, and you don't end up with any wiggles. If you see a wiggle, then that means there's a pleat on the other side and you're going to need to repress. Go ahead and finish that up. And then whenever I'm pressing a seam open, I also like to press it from the right side just to verify that, one, there are none of those wiggles or pleats, and then also to really cement it and get it really nice and flat. So I'm going to do that with my other ones, and then the magic is going to start to happen. All right, so I have everything arranged the way it was to start with. Just now we've got these strips sewn on to the right side of our larger focal fabrics. So here's where the fun begins. This is what a row is going to look like, or at least half of it. And we're going to be able to make 4 half rows at a time by doing this, by just putting right sides together like so and like so. And then I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch seam down both of these. Then we're going to join our halves together, cut them apart, and we're going to be done. And it's so fast. I love strip piecing for this exact reason. So I'm going to start sewing these together. One tip, if you're having issues where your seams are getting a little bendy when you do this, we started from the top and worked our way down for that first seam. So what you may want to try doing if you're having that issue is sewing from the bottom up. So that way you're sewing in an opposite direction. It kind of puts little different stresses on the seam. So if you're having any problems with that, that's a good way to avoid it happening in the future. Since I do need to cut this, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of lining up my tops. That way I'm going to have one really nice even edge to work from. That way I don't end up in a situation where I might not have enough to cut because I didn't line it up nicely enough. All right, it's time to give this a press again. And again, you can either do this where you're pressing it to the dark side or open like I'm doing. Either is fine. You do want to make sure that you are not pressing the other seam that is right next to it going the wrong way when you do this. I just kind of angle my iron to the side to avoid that from happening. All right, so we just have one more seam to join, and then not just one, but 4 of our row halves are going to be almost done. Told you this was a really fast and fun one. All right, one more seam to press and then we are almost done. All right, so this is what half of a row is going to look like, but we're gonna cut it apart to make it the same width that it's supposed to be, and we're gonna get 4 of them out of this strip pieced unit. So this is why I really try to keep these edges even, because when I cut this, I don't want it to be all jagged because I'm gonna lose a little bit as I square up this edge, and I don't wanna lose a ton of it because that's not gonna be good. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna flip this around and square up that edge, so that way I can lose as little as possible when I start sewing this. So I'm just taking my ruler and I'm lining it up even with these Stashin strips and the seams that I've got. And I'm just gonna cut a sliver off the edge here. And our piece is actually longer than my cutting mat, so I'm gonna pull that toward me. And what I do is I like to leave a good chunk that's already been trimmed, and I use that to help line it up to make sure I'm square with what I've cut before. So I'm lining it up nicely with everything that I've already trimmed, and then I'm making sure that we're still good up here. And I can actually see that I'm losing just a little tiny bit up there, so I need to come in just a little bit more and take maybe an extra 1/4 of an inch off in order to get that nice and square. But you want to take off as little as possible, which is why it's really important to line those edges up when you are sewing. All right, we've got it in line and it's going all the way to the edge, so I'm able to trim that off now. All right, now I'm going to flip everything around. I am right-handed, so I want to make sure that I'm always cutting on the left, so it will be opposite if you are lefty. But what I'm doing is I'm putting the edge that I just squared up over to the left. That way I can line everything up with my ruler and I can just cut straight across to create my rows. So I'm looking at a couple of things when I'm squaring this up. I'm of course making sure that my edge is even with the measurement that it's supposed to be. That measurement is in the pattern, and again, this is called Garden Plot, and you can get it at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. I'm also making sure that my lines are nice and even with the seams, and that way it'll make sure it's nice and square when those get sewn together as well. Go ahead and cut up as far as I can. And just like before, I'm going to kind of pull this to the side, leave a little bit here so I've got something to line up and measure against. So now I'm going to line up my edge the same way I was before. I'm also looking at my seams to make sure those are nice and square, and I'm making sure I'm in line with the edge that I already cut. So here we go. I've got half of a row together. It was super fast. I think I've been sewing for about half an hour at this point. So it's so fast to get these together, and as soon as I trim it, I've got 4 more half rows done, and so that means I've got 2 whole rows done in half an hour, and it's super fast and super easy. Now it's going to go even faster if you're going to strip piece this whole baby together. Now you've got to get the pattern because not all the rows have the same configuration. Some of them have the pieces in different spots. So you're gonna wanna take a look at that. We've got it all figured out for you. There's one more thing I wanna show you before we go. And that is how to make sure that your stashing strips that go horizontally across this row go in the same direction as the chevrons that are in between. So when we sewed these together, we were cutting across the width of fabric, which is the way that the vast majority of quilt patterns tell you to cut. But this is a directional print. So if I'm going to cut across the width of fabric to create my horizontal stashing that goes in between, it's gonna look something like this. So you're gonna have some chevrons going this way and some going this way. And if you're somebody who that doesn't bother, then do it. It's fine. There's no quilt police here. But if that is gonna bother you, what I've done is I have told you how to cut across the length of the fabric. So what you're going to do is you're going to unroll your fabric and you are going to cut it to the length that your finished quilt width is. And then instead of cutting from the selvage to the fold like you do across the width of fabric, which the majority of instructions tell you to do, what you're going to do is you're going to cut across it. And then when you sew it together, everything is going to be going in the same direction. Just in this case, I would have it flipped the other way because you can see my little dots are pointing this way, or my little points, and I want them to all point to the other direction. But that's basically all you do. Instead of cutting across the width of fabric from selvage to selvage, you're going to cut across the length of the fabric, making sure to first cut it to the length of your finished quilt width. It makes it a lot easier because you don't have to piece anything, and then you can have your directional fabric all going in the same direction, which makes it look a little bit more professional, and it can tell all your friends that you worked really hard to make it look that way. So one more thing I need to show you, and then this quilt is all done. So when we did this, what we did is we strip pieced everything together with our stashing pieces to the right. So what that's going to do is it's going to give you all the stashing strips on the right hand side of your block. So when you decide how to lay it out, you can get it really nice and scrappy. But once you decide which rows are going to be on the left side of the quilt, you need to add a stashing piece to the left side. And you'll want to make sure that if you're using directional fabric that it's pointing in the correct direction. This one is, it's pointing this way. And the instructions that I've given you will show you how to cut it, so that way you don't have to worry about it going in the wrong direction if you are using directional fabric like I am here. Now, if you guys saw the video when I did the Allison Glass modern trip around the world for Stashin with Stephanie, I took little mailing labels and I wrote out row 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And I'm going to do that with this too once I decide what all these are. First, I'm going to make all of my row halves according to the pattern instructions. Then I'm going to lay them all out on the floor because I'm not fancy. I don't have a design wall or anything like that. And I'm going to label them, and then I can just go and I can sew all of these to the left side of my left row to finish that off, and I don't have to worry about accidentally getting them out of order and not knowing where they're supposed to be. And then I can just put them back in, sew them together, and make it just go super, super fast. Thanks so much for following along with this month's Stashin with Stephanie video tutorial. Again, if you want to join Stashin with Stephanie, you get 12 fat quarters for the price of 10 for $29.99 plus shipping each month. And we give you a coupon code for $10 off a $20 purchase. So you can get up to 18 free yards of fabric each year, plus the 12 free patterns that will come with this. Now, if you're not a member, you can always get this separately. You can download the garden plot pattern to go with this, or you can always get the fabric and kits while they last over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. When you guys support us by purchasing your fabric and your patterns from us, when you like them, that's what helps us bring you all these free video tutorials. So we appreciate that and we love you for it. So thanks so much, and until next time, happy quilting.